Thursday, April 23rd, and we are continuing in our story, A Wild Robot. So, right now, we're hearing a really hard story because it's really sad about what was happening to the flock. So, we know that it was a really hard winter, right? Then on the island. It was also a hard winter for the geese to get where they were going. So, they were in a storm. And due to this storm, they got stranded in a place that they usually weren't. But they found a farm with a greenhouse, and this old cat was letting the whole flock of geese stay in the greenhouse until the people saw them. And unfortunately, Longneck was killed by the farmer, right? And so Brightbill was taking over, and now he is the leader, and he's trying to get them somewhere warmer, somewhere they're going to be safe. There were more buildings by the coast. Most of them were on land, but some were in the ocean. The ocean buildings were dirty and crumbling and leaning in different directions. There weren't any humans or robots in those buildings, only sea creatures. We saw ships on the water, we saw ships on the land, we even saw ships in the air. They buzzed through the sky like giant dragonflies. And then we reached a place called a city, where thousands of buildings and robots and humans and ships were all close together. When we stopped to rest on a rooftop, we met a friendly pigeon named Graybeak. She had grown up there, so she knew everything about the city. She flew us over towers and under bridges and kept us away from the buzzing airships. And everywhere we went, there were robots. Some of the city robots were just like you, Ma, but others crawled on 6 legs or rolled on wheels or slid up and down the sides of buildings. Some robots were really small and some were really big. They moved things and cleaned things and built things and did every kind of job you can think of. Graybeak brought us down to a ledge on the side of a building and told us to look through the window. Inside was a family of humans, and they had a Roz robot. When we looked into other buildings, we saw other humans with other robots. Every human seemed to have a robot. I told Graybeak about you, Ma, and she wanted us to show us one last place. We flew out to the edge of the city to a really big building called a factory. Graybeak brought us to the roof window, and we looked down in the factory and saw machines, building sparkling heads and torsos and limbs. The factory was building robots! A machine held up a robot torso and put 2 legs under it. Then they snapped it into place. It put feet under the legs and they snapped it into place. It snapped arms into shoulders and snapped hands into arms, and heads were snapped on top, and the robot was finished, Ma. The robot looked just like you. I think that is the factory where you were built. I wanted to watch more robots being built, but it started snowing again. So we said goodbye to Graybeak and continued flying south. We saw fewer robots and humans and buildings and ships. The air became warmer and the snow disappeared. We started seeing other flocks of geese in the sky, so we followed them to the middle of the wide grassy field where there was a lake and hundreds of other geese. We'd finally reached the wintering grounds. After all we'd been through together, our flock had become very close. We kept to ourselves, eating and resting and remembering the geese we lost. But after a few weeks, we began to mingle with the other flocks. We met geese from all over the world, and they told us about their homes and their migrations and their troubles and their winter weather. Every flock had lost geese on the way there. A few flocks didn't make it at all. Before we knew it, the early spring flowers were poking up, and it was time to fly home. We followed the usual migration route north. We flew over fields and forests and hills, but we didn't see any signs of humans or robots, and that was fine with us. Eventually, we reached the ocean, and then our island, and then our pond, and then I saw you. So now we've learned that there are robots all over the world, right? And they're being built in this factory, and the robots are doing all kinds of jobs. Some are crawling, some are working in houses, some are working on farms. Very interesting. Chapter 64, The Special Robot. After Brightbill told the story of his winter, he and his mother sat in silence and thought. They thought about poor Longneck and the human who had killed him. They thought about farms and cities and factories. They thought about Roz and where she truly belonged. Then, after a while, Roz told Bright Bill about her own winter story. She spoke of her long, dark hibernation and how she had awakened to find the nest caved in around her. She spoke of blizzards and frozen animals. She spoke of the many lodges she had built and the one that had caught fire. But she mostly spoke of all the new friendships she had forged. I used to think that you were the only animal who would ever care about me, she said to her son. I worried that without you around, I would be alone again. But I was not alone. In fact, I made new friends all on my own. I think the other animals might actually like me. Of course they like you, Ma, squawked the goose. You're the most likable robot I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot. It was true. Bright Bill had seen hundreds of different robots that winter, and none of them were anything like Roz. None of them had learned how to speak with animals or had saved an island from the cold or had adopted a gooseling. As he sat there watching the robots, animal gestures, and listening to her animal sounds, Bright Bill realized just how special his mom really was. Chapter 65, The Invitation. Roz was the first to arrive at the next dawn truce. She had an important announcement to make. The robot patiently waited in the great meadow as the sky slowly brightened and the animals slowly gathered. And once everyone was milling around and chatting, Roz began speaking in her perkiest voice. Pardon the interruption. If I could please have a moment of your time. The crowd settled down and listened to the robot friend. We made it through a terrible winter. A new generation of youngsters is arriving, and my son Bright Bill has just returned to the island with his flock. I think we can all agree that there is much to celebrate. In addition to the dawn truce this morning, I would like us to have another truce this evening. We can call it the evening truce, or better yet, the party truce. The crowd began chattering with excitement. I have planned a celebration, Roz continued, and you are all invited. I will take care of everything. Just please meet back here at dusk. Oh, and I have a little surprise. Actually, it's not little, it's quite large. The point is, I had planned a celebration, and I hope to see you all there. Sounds great, Roz, but I'm afraid there's one problem with your plan. Mr. Beaver blinked his beady eyes. The moon won't be out this evening, so it'll be too dark for some of us to see. You are half correct, said Roz. Tonight will be moonless, but it will not be dark, I promise. Now, if you will excuse me, I must prepare for our party. I will see everyone back here at dusk. Goodbye. Chapter 66, The Celebration. Dawn turned to day, day turned to dusk, and just as Roz had asked, animals were gathering again in the great meadow. Word had spread across the island that the robot was throwing a party, and everyone wanted to see what the fuss was about. The fuss seemed to be about a giant stack of wood. Roz had spent the day collecting logs and branches and stacking them in a massive tower. The animals crowded around it, trying to imagine its purpose. And then they saw a golden light flickering in the distance. Roz emerged from the dark forest. In her hand was a flaming stick, which she held up like a torch. She was camouflaged in thick mud and a cluster of wildflowers. But her camouflage wasn't for hiding. It was her party dress. The animals watched as the robot glided across the meadow, surrounded by a warm glow. Thank you for all being here, she said as she joined the crowd. 1 year ago, I awoke on the shore of this island. I was just a machine. I functioned. But you, my friends and my family, you have taught me how to live. And so, I thank you. No, thank you, Roz, shouted a voice. You have also taught me to be wild, said the robot. So let us all celebrate life and wilderness together. At those words, Roz heaved her torch high in the air. It soared up, 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 and landed at the very top of the wooden tower. A ball of fire burst toward the night sky, and suddenly the meadow was bathed in firelight. Hundreds of shining eyes watched as bright flames crept down the sides of the tower, and embers floated away in the breeze. The animals stepped toward the bonfire, eager to feel its warmth, then stepped back, afraid of feeling too much. And soon everyone was moving. The deer started leaping, the foxes started trotting, the snakes slithered, and the insects buzzed, and the fish jumped from the river. Bright Bill led all the birds into the air, where they wheeled around the bonfire like a tornado of feathers. Roz sprang into a wild dance, her shaggy dress shaking and swooshing with each movement. It was a wild party, and it took our robot to make it happen. Get their giant bonfire, right? And they're all dancing and celebrating. Spring is here. Life is good. Roz and the animals partied all night long. They were so busy singing and laughing and dancing that they didn't see the cargo ship as it sliced past the island. But the ship saw them. It saw the towering bonfire. It saw the robot, and then it quietly continued through the darkness. So, we might have a new problem. There is a cargo ship that has spotted the robot and the animals and the bonfire. I want you to think, what might happen to Roz or the animals because this cargo ship saw them? We will continue with chapter 67, The Sunrise, on Tuesday, May 5th. I will see you back here then. Have a great day.